Welcome to this new virtual series, A Walk in the Park with Gil. My name is Gil Penalosa, in Spanish, Guillermo Peñalosa. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and lived during my childhood across from a public park. My parents say that actually I lived in the park. Many years later, I served as Bogota's head of parks, sports and recreation. Magnificent opportunity. I led the design and construction of over 200 parks, from Simón Bolívar Park with over 100 hectares to multiple neighborhood ones, mostly in low-income areas. Now I live in Canada, and 15 years ago created 880 Cities, a non-profit organization which focuses on parks, streets, and other public spaces and their uses by people of all ages and backgrounds. I was elected chair of World Urban Parks twice and now serve as its ambassador. Hello, wherever you are, good morning, good evening, good night, and welcome to A Walk in the Park with Gil. Today we have a magnificent guest, and today we are for a treat. Because botanical gardens, sometimes people think, oh, that's only for people that are very knowledgeable. They need to know a lot about trees. No, I'd rather just go to the park. So we are going to eliminate that myth, because around the world, over 500 million people visit botanical gardens every year. That's over 500 million. That's amazing, the amount of people that visit parks. And today we're going to learn from one of the best in the world, which is Greater Sydney's Royal Botanic Gardens. And we have the best, the woman in charge of it. Denise Ora, I thank you very, very much for coming on board and teaching us a little bit about what the Royal Botanic Gardens are all about in Greater Sydney. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. What a beautiful welcoming. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited, and I really would love to change that myth, that the Botanic Gardens are such beautiful places. So I'd love to start by sharing my presentation, but obviously just to say hi, I am Denise Ora, Chief Executive, Royal Botanic Gardens and Domain Trust. And also part of that is our Australian Institute of Botanical Science. There's two very different parts to our organisation in the way we have our wonderful, beautiful green spaces, but also our scientific elements. Just to give you some insight into what our gardens are made up of. So we have 3 botanic gardens that I look after, and that includes the Royal Botanic Garden Sydney. We also have a wonderful area called the Domain, which we call Sydney Stage, the Domain. We have the Australian Botanic Gardens at Mount Annan, and we also have the beautiful Blue Mountains Botanic Gardens in our wonderful Blue Mountains region. And I just thought I'd give you a little bit of background on those. Bear with me. So our Botanic Gardens in Sydney, the Royal Botanic Gardens, is actually Australia's oldest scientific institution from 1816. You can see here it's surrounded by the beautiful Sydney Harbour in an ideal location. I do sometimes say to people it's pretty tough having to go to work every morning, but we're in lockdown at the moment, and I'm really missing actually being able to go backwards and forwards to a lot of our gardens. It's home to our National Herbarium of New South Wales, which is a preserved specimens of about 1.4 million specimens that we use as part of our research, identification, documentation of all those species. And our herbariums, we're building a new herbarium out at our Mount Annan site, which should be opened in March next year and finished being built in October this year. So the actual specimens that are in our herbarium were collected by Banks and Solander in 1770 on that very first voyage that came to Kurnell, and they did an 8-day visit of collecting specimens. And we have a section of those, obviously that particular, assortment of collection very much supported and protected within our vaults. We have 30 hectares for the gardens. So when I also talk about the domain, that's about 34 hectares. But the gardens itself is where we talk about wanting to protect collections. Our gardens is made up of a living collection, and But the one wonderful thing about our Botanic Gardens is it's actually free for international visitors and free for our visitors, which is very different to some other areas around the world. And if you can see, based on that location, it's a wonderful place to walk from our beautiful opera house through the gardens. We've also getting our new art gallery, which is the new Sydney Modern being built within the precinct, which is fantastic. We have over 20,000 taxa, and more than, in just this particular garden, more than 5 million visitors each year. But we're actually up around, normally at normal times, around 6 million. Obviously with COVID, we've reduced our visitation by about 54%. So it's been a really difficult and complex time for us. And we're one of the top 10 visitor destinations in New South Wales and actually in Australia, I think it was the last count. And we also have won the major tourist attraction of the year in New South Wales. So exciting, beautiful place. As soon as we can all travel again, you've got to come and visit us. So the domain, which is an interesting space, which is surrounding the gardens, is really our major event space that we call. So we will have all our larger events. Hopefully this year we've got carols coming, so the Christmas carols celebration. We've probably the very first big event we've had this year. And we have over 10 million visitors roughly coming through there, mostly made up of obviously events, but also our wonderful corporate visitors who come during the day. We have a high level of sports happening within that space. And, you know, lots of people doing, you know, all sorts of things, joggers and all sorts of types of exercise happening. Sometimes in the middle of summer it can be absolutely crazy, but it's so wonderful just to watch how everyone moves about that space. It's also a significant cultural space for us. Obviously, this whole site, including the gardens, is part of First Contact, and that's a very important, I'll talk a little bit more later about that heritage and how we're really valuing our cultural heritage. And I said it's part of our festivals and wonderful place for the city. Okay, now the Australian Botanic Garden at Mount Annan, roughly that's increased the visitation. This is located in Western Sydney, and the visitation has increased significantly over the last 4 to 5 years, and we're normally around 750,000 visitors a year. It's also Australia's largest botanic garden. We have 416 hectares, and the predominant species are all Australian flora, and we hold within our plant bank, which is a really important conservation area for us in our plant bank, which holds about 65% of New South Wales threatened species as a seed collection. Our plant bank that we finished building is now going to be linked really closely, or in fact it's next door to what our new herbarium in New South Wales will be. And with that seed collection and our preserved specimen collection, we can actually say now that this is probably one of the most biodiverse spaces on the planet, which is a pretty big statement, but it's very exciting just from the protection of species. And as I mentioned, 65% of New South Wales threatened species. Sometimes you're not allowed to have favourite gardens. Well, I can't tell the staff that, but I do love when I go to the Blue Mountains, to our gorgeous Blue Mountains Botanic Garden. And it's this idyllic space set amongst this, World Heritage site. So it's 1,000 metres above sea level. And I know in many countries that's just a hill, but to us, it's a mountain. And the World Heritage Site covers the whole of that Blue Mountains or Greater Blue Mountains, beautiful, beautiful places to go and visit. We have 28 hectares of actual, what we would call more formal manicured gardens. Obviously, it is a cool climate because it's in our Blue Mountains. And also, unfortunately, during the bushfires of 1920, we have roughly 189 hectares of conservation area that was totally destroyed, and I'm pleased to say is coming back slowly. But the fires were around the Gosford Mountain were quite significant. So that's just to give you a little bit of understanding of what the gardens are. There's 3 really unique spaces, and obviously the domain is a very unique space for the events program. And I just thought it'd be great just to really highlight quickly the types of people and programs that we're here for. I talk about our First Nations Australians, and it is such an important, I guess, strategy for us, but just a very something I'm very, very passionate about is acknowledging and recognising just the significance of our traditional custodians. And we share a lot with our community in wanting to, I guess, raise the awareness. It's always about raising that cultural awareness and the significance of our rich cultural heritage. And so we obviously have events throughout the year, and even as far as looking at now traditional land practices, particularly at Australian Botanic Garden, with cultural burning practices, and understanding that knowledge of our land has been there for thousands of years, and not just the 200 years of our gardens. We're very diverse. I have an incredible staff. They're just amazing. They're creative, they're dynamic, they're passionate, and we are always celebrating lots of different things. This is the team at Mardi Gras. We also sponsor the 500 Queer Scientists, which is a wonderful event where these young upcoming scientists talk about different scenarios in their life and how their science integrates in with their personal journeys. And also, to us, diversity is, I guess, the way forward. You like in nature, that's our survival. And so we're really embracing lots of different opportunities, particularly from employment. Obviously, we run different programs for sort of women in leadership. So it's just, and a very big important part, as I spoke before, was our identified roles and improving the quality of our employment opportunities for our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We have wonderful outreach programs. So our community greening team, we have youth community greening and community greening, and we have, since 20 years with the community greening team, we've managed to help communities in lower socioeconomics areas to actually, I think we've built nearly over 850 gardens now, and we've reached over 850,000 participants. It's the type of project that has to come with donations, and we managed to work within our department and have raised another amount that'll keep us going for another 3 years. But this is such an important part for communities. And we also, with the schools, teaching young people about resilience, about the importance of nature, and also just that it's the starting to help build that next generation of conservationists and environmentalists, which we're really passionate about. This team are award-winning and managed to visit remote spaces in New South Wales, and have recently received a grant to help those who were caught in through the devastated bushfires, and helping to rebuild some of the community gardens. Education is at the forefront for us as well, and we do say we're on a mission to help our planet. And I talk about these wonderful education programs that we have that are anything from a young seedlings group right through to primary and secondary education programs. We have over 60,000 students, teachers, and plus our outreach every year attend over 1,000 different education programs, along with a digital platform that we created. Obviously, we call our Living Learning Lab, and we have about 25,000 different visitors to that each month, which is fantastic. And that was really this push to go digital to help people during lockdown. And that's accessed by teachers and volunteers and students, and we do train the trainer for teachers, etc. And then we talk about why people love coming to Botanic Gardens, and it's about displays as well, beautiful displays. So this is just an assortment across our 3 gardens. We've got beautiful paper daisies at Mount Annan. We've got wonderful daffodils of Tomah. We've got tulips. And then the bigger picture on the right-hand side is actually in our calyx, and the calyx is our beautiful events venue and horticultural display. area. And the green wall that we have where we do all our wonderful displays is the largest in the Southern Hemisphere and has over 17,500 single pots that make up the display. So it's almost like a patchwork quilt coming together. Our displays, these are our spring displays, and that's what is sort of out there at the moment in spring, obviously different to other areas in the world. And we're also about events, obviously, lots of different events. We have a very, clear understanding and direction of the diversity of the types of events we have, everything from really large music events, beer festivals, obviously Christmas carols. And the events can be anything, you know, from a wedding of 200 people all the way through, obviously, to sort of 50,000 people across our sites. Our Sydney site in the CBD has New Year's Eve as well that we link to with the rest of the city of Sydney. And I'm pleased to say that we'll be able to be holding events this year for New Year's Eve, which we were all fingers crossed so when we come out of lockdown. And food and beverage is huge for us as well. We have license and lease arrangements with third parties. We've had investment in our restaurants, and we love celebrating that one of our restaurants, the Botanic House, has a wonderful celebrity chef, Luke Newen. And we're also at the present moment in time, if you look at the bottom two, or the bottom image, which is our Blue Mountains restaurant, we're out to tender at the moment to look for new operators. So that's really exciting as well. That slide's gone a bit funny, so my apologies. So I think it's important to understand the gardens in the concept of a wonderful place to come and visit, to relax. It's about your health and well-being, exercising, picnics, just such a beautiful place to unwind and really reflect. So there's that component, but obviously Botanic Gardens also have a reason for their existence, and things have changed over the years. As Gil mentioned, they did seem quite elitist before, but you don't need to understand everything about plants and to come to the Botanic Gardens. We do a lot of interpretation. Our goal is really to educate as you're walking through, and we, through our interpretation and our signage, we love to talk about plants, obviously. But Botanic Gardens, as a group, and when we talk, we're very close around the world, and we work a lot with our peers, is really about understanding that preservation of and protecting plants, identifying, understanding, preserving. And it's an interesting understanding that when we talk here, and I mentioned that 40% of all plant species are actually threatened with extinction. And the Botanic Gardens around the world actually hold about 40% of all known species, and 41%, where we talked about between that 41 and 40% that are threatened with extinction. So it's a really, it's a huge amount. And the goal is to have, hopefully one day, which is a big goal, is to actually have about 75% of all threatened species held within Botanic Gardens. And that's where the key component of our science comes in. We also work really closely to work through the United Nations Sustainable Goals, and part of those are obviously, climate change, equality in education, communities, cities, working through, we help actually with that from an inequality perspective, working through different spaces. And as a group with our peers, other Botanic Gardens, other institutions, all working together to find solutions to critical environmental challenges facing us. And so on the 25th of March this year, we launched the Australian Institute of Botanical Science, which encompasses, the expertise of our wonderful science and horticultural teams, our education teams, our wonderful facilities, the herbarium, the plant bank, the plant clinic. And our plant clinic is where we do a lot of pathogen testing and disease testing. And bringing this together as, that opportunity to be a national leader for Australia in plant science, obviously working collaboratively with all of our other friends and institutions. And as I said before, our role is to discover, understand and document plants. It's about long-term conservation. The images you're seeing here are through our seed bank, and also looking from a germplasm, where we're actually taking different tissue cultures, because some species it's very hard to propagate from seeds, so we use tissue culture. I talk about here where there's 24,000 species of plants in Australia. But what's really interesting and how unique it is that 87% of those are found nowhere else on the planet. And so at our Australian plant bank, where I talk about 65% of New South Wales threatened species are located there, we also obviously have different share relationships for different species located at other different herbaria, and so plant, or what we call seed banks, both in Australia and around the world. We want to look at ensuring resilient ecosystems. So a lot of the work that we're doing is about rehabilitation, in essence, and revegetation. So there's a lot of sites out there. If you think about, mining sites coming to an end, you've got major development happening. We have to ensure that we're putting the right species in the right location. And so when I talk about greening the urban environment, we have the opportunity within our nurseries to look at large-scale investigation as such. So from an experiment, we look at viable seed production, and it all comes down to that understanding of an increase in biodiversity. The last thing you want is to be developing what we call monocultures from a species selection, or when you're in a development site and rehabilitating it. What you want to be able to have is a diverse population of species in order to ensure the longevity and sustainability of it. So we do an enormous amount of work in our restore and renew capabilities, and obviously these larger scale experiments. We also have, I mentioned before, in our herbaria, we have actually 1.4 million specimens. And with the new move to our new herbarium, we're digitising that collection, and we're going to hit 1 million this year in our digital or digitisation project. And what that means is about 75% of scientists' research can be done using these digital images. So that means we've unlocked our collection for use to everyone around the world. It's not just limited to our space. And it's just such an incredible opportunity that we can share our knowledge. And that's an important part of our act, is to ensure that knowledge is accessible to all. And finally, I mentioned before, we collaborate with scientists within Australia and around the world with lots of different projects, our Millennial Seed Bank partnerships. We also have a council heads of Botanic Gardens, which I'm really lucky to be sitting on with my other state government Botanic Garden leads, and lots of different projects. And our scientists are well regarded, incredible experts in their fields. And it's just such an exciting place to be in at the moment, considering that, that language around biodiversity conservation is just such, it's at the forefront at the moment. And being able to, find or be able to share and support these critical environmental challenges and finding solutions for them is something, as an organisation, we are so passionate about. And also passionate about the health and well-being of all of our visitors. So I hope in a short time, I haven't gone too fast and been able to share with you just a bit of information about our beautiful Botanic Gardens, but also the opportunities to share, our knowledge and become part of, I guess, our crusade on this saving this planet as well. Thank you.
Denise, thank you very, very much. I want to congratulate you and everyone that works with you, because you really run a magnificent botanical garden that can be an example to other botanics around the world, not only in developed countries, but very, very important in emerging countries. This, the same way that Denise was talking, that within a city is not just for the educated, wealthy, but it's for everybody. Around the world, Botanic Gardens is also for everybody. The emerging countries actually need even more Botanic Gardens, because all of those are the cities that are growing a lot. And they need the Botanic Gardens so that from the green point of view, they will grow properly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And I love what you're doing. I love the walk in the park with girls. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.